to get to also Wilbur Ross. What can you tell us about him?
Right. So Wilbur Ross is like this private equity baron. It's an interesting choice for the Commerce Department, who's an organization that's supposed to promote commerce within the United States, because a lot of what he did was outsource the jobs of these companies that he would pick up that were failing, particularly a textile company in North Carolina. But where he intersects with the foreclosure crisis is that one of these dead companies that he picked up out of the ground and tried to rehabilitate was called American Home Mortgage Servicing, or OMSI. And OMSI was absolutely one of the worst mortgage servicing companies in America. There's no doubt about it. They used that third-party processing company, DocX, to write up these fake mortgage assignments to use as evidence in court cases. They did this thousands and thousands of times. The Linda Green documents, a lot of those were OMSI documents. And Linda Green was this person who was signing on behalf of 20 different banks, and it wasn't even always her signature. The other employees, to move the assembly line along at DocX, other employees would sign her name, and they asked DocX, why did you use Linda Green as this, authorized to sign on behalf of all these banks? And they said her name was easy to spell. And that's why they used her, so the rest of the employees could easily spell it. After OMSI, basically they got bought by another mortgage servicing company called Ocwen, and Wilbur Ross went onto their board, and Ocwen was fined for $2 billion by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the director, Richard Cordray, said that they violated the law, and I'm quoting, at every stage of the mortgage process. So this was another bad company. And Wilbur Ross, another interesting timing here, ended up leaving Ocwen at the end of 2014 and selling his $72 million in stock right before the stock crashed after revelations of more illegal behavior and fell by 20%.
These guys are super lucky.
They're really lucky guys. I just can't imagine how he would have figured that out. Being on the board and everything, of course, that's a position that doesn't get a lot of information.
Right? No, of course not.
About the company.
Well, I'm sure the SEC might look into that in the future.
Right, absolutely. But here's the thing. Okay, so the overlay is this. These two guys were profiteers of this great foreclosure crisis, right?
Not just profiteers, though, right? Not just profiteers, because profiteers make money off of catastrophic events. These guys enhanced and created and increased these events, right? I can be a war profiteer is one thing, but if I'm the guy who's actually going there and assassinating one of the leaders of one country and blaming it on the other country to start the war, that's another. And in many respects, it sounds like these guys were actually creating the misery and not just profiteering off it.
Well, that's valid, but at the same time, these were industry, very standard practices that we know all about, that this was systemic. And what we know is that the administration, the Obama administration, failed to stop these practices at any level. And what we also know is that this failure was at least in part responsible for this Republican backlash that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very interesting study done this week by the Center for American Progress. And it looked at counties in the Midwest, in the states that flipped, it looked particularly at counties that went from red to blue, counties that went from, or blue to red, Democrats to Republicans. And it found that the negative equity rate, in other words, the rate of people who owed more on their mortgages than they were worth, was much higher in these areas that went from blue to red, and also in the urban areas that had much less support for the Democrat. And that's that negative equity rate is a decent indicator for whether that was a hard hit area for housing and foreclosures. And
I would imagine they could find that data too, though, about the foreclosures directly, right? I mean, because
but it's easier to do negative equity. Actually, it's a terrible failure of public policy that we actually don't know how many people get foreclosed on. Most of the studies are industry-funded studies. We don't actually track that data at the federal level, which is completely ridiculous. Yeah, but here's the point. So President Obama, in one of the biggest mistakes and failures of his presidency, ends up protecting bank balance sheets and favoring them over homeowner balance sheets. And they do ineffective and weak and in some cases predatory programs like HAMP to try to help out homeowners that don't do the job. And then when they find all these findings of horrible misconduct created by the banks and by mortgage servicing companies, they don't use that as leverage to get homeowners better outcomes. And as a result, at least in part, Donald Trump gets elected and then picks these guys who profited off that neglect to end up running the country.
It would make for
That's
a great
irony.
It would make for a great novel, wouldn't it? I mean, well, I mean, it's just you and I spoke about every one of these issues many, many times. Obviously, you literally wrote the book in real time and after the fact and complaining about it. And you literally wrote the book on this. And I don't know that at any time we contemplated the notion that there would be some measure of accountability of this ilk, right? I mean, because this is ultimately what's going to, the Donald Trump's election is going to really, really destroy any of, or the vast majority of Barack Obama's legacy, right? I mean, so many things are going to be unwound, and that's the ultimate irony. You know, we were, I don't think that, I mean, we must have probably a week's worth of hours on this, right? I mean, just you and I talking about this stuff. And I don't think at any time during that I ever contemplated like that there would be this type of accountability. It's highly unfortunate that it has to be this type of accountability as opposed to like maybe somebody just writing in the history books about it. But this is, it has come back around.
It's really the ultimate repudiation of the lack of accountability that that was engaged in during and after the financial crisis. If there was any justice in this country, Steven Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross would be in a white-collar prison facility instead of the office of the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department. I mean, I say that without, I don't really think that's hyperbole. This was fraud that was manipulated in systemic ways that really implicates the top executives at every mortgage company in America. This was the largest consumer fraud in American history, and it went unpunished. And now here's the result.
And caused an incredible amount of pain. I mean, just an incredible amount of pain. Such
pain that people turned against the idea that government would have their backs, that the idea that government could be a positive force in their lives. And they went to this other side. And this is the result.
Let's talk about
anything else. Let's talk about anything else.
I know. Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.